YouTube, in this video, I'm going to be grading every NBA team's season so far for 2025. It is currently December 27th, 2024, and most NBA teams have played about 30 games, and I think it's a good enough sample size to really break down everyone's season and give them a grade. Disclaimers before we get into the video: I will be grading on a curve for each team, which basically means that I will be taking into account, things that aren't in the team's control, like injuries. So let's say, for example, your best player's out for, the whole season and you're playing really bad. Even though you're supposed to be good this season, I'm actually going to be, taking that into account and giving that team a little bit of slack, because it's not really a situation where I give them a terrible grade since their players have been down and stuff like that. And so I'll also be factoring in expectations going into the season. So just keep that in mind. Every team's grade will be geared specifically towards them, their expectations, and, basically their performance with all those things into account. Without further ado, let's get right into the video. If you enjoy it, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more awesome content like this. Let's go. We also will be going in alphabetical order, and starting with the Atlanta Hawks. I think a lot of people expected the Hawks to be somewhere around a play-in team this season. That's where I had them, and they have lived up to that standard, currently sitting at 16 and 15 in the Eastern Conference with the number 7 seed. And in my opinion, this is a very good result for the Hawks. I'm going to be giving them a solid B grade, because while they haven't really gone above and beyond, right, they're not necessarily legit playoff contenders at this moment, I still do think they've had a good season relative to what we thought they would be, and for that I give them a solid B grade. They're living up to their expectations in my opinion. Now for the Boston Celtics, the Celtics are 22-8 at the time of recording this, just lost a big game on Christmas to my Sixers. Thank you very much, Celtics, for that Christmas present. It was amazing. I'm going to give the Celtics a solid A grade, and the Celtics are currently second in the Eastern Conference, but again, not necessarily all their fault. They've been without Kristaps Porzingis for much of the season. They've dealt with little nagging injuries here and there, but at the end of the day, it's been mostly a healthy roster, and they played extremely well, as you'd expect for the best roster in the league. Even though they're number 2 in the conference, I still think they are a top 2 team in the entire NBA, no question about it. Maybe even the best team in the league when it really comes down to it. For the most part, they've done as good as they can. 22-8 is a great record, and the only reason I'm not giving them an A+ is because I just expected a tad more from them record-wise at this point. I thought they would actually be in contention for 70-game season in terms of wins. Doesn't look like that's going to be the case. Again, some of that can be attributed to Porzingis being out, but at the end of the day, I think a solid A is a fair grade for the Celtics. For the Brooklyn Nets, another high mark. I'm going to be giving them an A- grade, because the Brooklyn Nets have exceeded my expectations big time this season. I thought they would have the worst record, if not one of the worst records in the entire league. They are proving me wrong every single game, coming out and giving you a 12-18 record at this time of the season is excellent for this team. I think A- makes a lot of sense when you consider just how young and up in the air a lot of this roster is. We're not even sure if a lot of the players on this team are going to be on this team by the end of the season, right? We just saw them trade one of their best players in Dennis Schroeder, so only time will tell for this grade, but at this point, I think they have far exceeded, expectations. I would have them somewhere around, 6 wins by the time Christmas rolled around, and they are sitting at 12-18, just out of the play-in in the Eastern Conference, and I think that's really good, so I'm going to give them an A-. For the Charlotte Hornets, this is a really disappointing season for them, in my opinion, and it is clear at this point, I think, that they are doing some form of tanking. I really expected the Hornets to be in play-in contention, I'm not gonna lie. But this is a talented young roster with a lot of good pieces that on paper, when you look at it, they should be much better than 7-23, which is where they currently are. At this point, I think it's fair to say, like I said, that they're probably tanking for a draft pick, but you have to be disappointed as a Hornets fan. A lot of people are excited about this team, including myself. 7-23 is just really poor. I know there's been some injuries to LaMelo Ball. You've had your 2 centers in and out of the lineup, and obviously the injuries have contributed to the Hornets' extremely poor record, but at the end of the day, D- just seems fair, because this was a team I had in the play-in tournament around a 500 record by the end of the season. Clearly not going to be the case. For the Chicago Bulls, I'm going to have a B- grade. I think they're doing just about what I thought they would be, a little bit under 500, currently sitting at 13-18. You still have a lot of talented pieces on this roster. We could see some of them move by the deadline. Zach LaVine, Nikola Vucevic, both playing well. Josh Giddey's been a really good addition. This is, at the end of the day, a team in a transition period of their franchise. They're not necessarily going to compete. They're looking to move off of some of these long-term pieces, but at the end of the day, I think 13-18 is not bad for what you have, and currently at 10th in the Eastern Conference seeding. Not a terrible start for the Bulls, and maybe just a little worse than I expected. I'm going to give them a B- grade. Seems fair to me. The Cleveland Cavaliers are going to have an A+ grade, and if there was ever a team that I could give something higher than an A+, it would be the Cleveland Cavaliers, but unfortunately that's just the way the grading system works A+, the highest you can go, and I feel very confident about an A+ for the Cavs. We all knew that the Cavs would be good this season. They would be a playoff team or at worst a high play-in team. Boy, did we have them wrong. I mean, 26-4. This team actually could win 70 games. It's not even up for debate. It is possible for this team the way they're playing. I mean, you just can't start a season better than they have. You literally can't, right? 26-4. They're, currently 4 games above the Celtics for first place in the Eastern Conference. They have the best record in the entire NBA, and they are doing it night in and night out on both ends of the floor. Just so dominant. And again, for what we expected, this would be a playoff Eastern Conference team, maybe around the 4 seed, maybe around the 6 seed. You could even say, at best, maybe 2 or 3, but they have been the best team on paper, statistically, record-wise, with their play throughout the entire NBA. They've been the best team in the league, no question, throughout 30 games. And A+ is the only thing you can put on them. And again, I'd go even higher if I could. Just a perfect start for the Cavs. And hopefully for their sake, they can continue it, right? I think they can. And so, it's interesting to see how close they get to 70 games by the end of the season. During the ranking process of this video, I found it difficult a little bit for a couple teams, and the Dallas Mavericks are one of them because they've had kind of a rocky start to this season. You come off that, magical finals run last year. Everybody expects big things. You have a great offseason, one of the best in the league. You bring in Najee Marshall, you bring in Klay Thompson. Everyone has such high hopes, and then you kind of really stumble out of the gate. You know what I mean? And it's been, like I said, a rocky road. They've dealt with some injuries here and there. I mean, Najee Marshall has been out a little bit, but overall, I think this team at the end of the day is just trying to find their chemistry together. There's a lot of new pieces, and they're having to deal with so much, pressure and expectations that this team's just not used to. But currently, they sit at 19-11 in the Western Conference, which makes them currently the 4th seed in the West. And so you really can't be too upset with that result at the end of the day because they have been playing much better as of late. And this is a good record in a historically great West, and that's why I have a B- grade for the Mavericks. You could say they could be a little higher, maybe B+, maybe B, but I think the inconsistencies is really the main issue. It's not necessarily the record. It's hard to rank a 4 seed in the West a B-, right? But at the end of the day, they just haven't really been able to put it all together consistently, and I think that's kind of my main issue. But again, the only reason I have them so low at B- is because I expected so much, and that is a good thing, and they're playing great. And so, it's just not really a big deal. I know Luka's dealing with an injury. There's no question by the end of the year, they're going to be an A+, playoff contender, but just a little bit up and down, too much a little bit for my liking. The Denver Nuggets, this is going to be a C- grade. Another team that's been super inconsistent that we expect so much of because they have the best player on the planet in Nikola Jokic, who is having one of the greatest seasons I've ever seen anyone have. I mean, it's just unreal what he's doing, and to still be at 16-12, in this Western Conference is crazy to me because of how great he's playing. You need a little bit more consistency from Jamal Murray, MPJ. There's just been so much that hasn't gone super well for the Nuggets, and again, really none of it's on Jokic. Big shocker, I know. Just doesn't look like the same team that we've been watching throughout the last few seasons, and you just expect better from the Nuggets, and not Jokic, but everybody around him basically. And so that is the reason I have them at a C-. I really thought they'd be better this season. For the Detroit Pistons, currently sitting at 14-17 in the Eastern Conference, and that makes them the 9th seed currently in the play-in spot. They've been winning a lot of games, really close games. It has been a night and day difference between this season and last season with their team and how they performed. I am giving the Detroit Pistons an A- grade because they are currently at 14 wins, which was their record last year for the whole season. And so you have to really give a ton of props to JB Bickerstaff and his staff, and also the entire roster for turning this thing around. They are currently in play-in contention, which is awesome to see from this young and up-and-coming team with a lot of talent, and they're just quietly putting together a solid NBA season for what the roster is. And so I have to give them an A-, exceeding expectations. I thought they'd be somewhere around a 12 or 13 seed, and that still could be, but right now they're currently sitting at 9, and for them specifically, it's been an awesome start. For the Golden State Warriors, this was another tough team to rank. They've just been all over the place this season. We start out with an incredible record, looking like the 2022 version of the Warriors, and since then it has been nothing but downhill. The Warriors are 15-14 at the time of recording this, and they have went all the way from the 2 seed in the West. I believe they're even the 1 seed at one point, all the way down to the 10 seed in the West. And again, I know it's the West, and it's a little bit difficult to stay where you're at in the West if you're not an elite team, but holy cow, have they been lackluster these last few games. Out of their last 10 games, they're 3-7. It's just been all over the place, and for that, I have to give it a C+ grade. You get a lot of credit from me for the start of the season and where you're currently sitting at, a play-in team, because again, in the West, a play-in team is basically like a playoff team in the East, but at the end of the day, you could be so much better, and I think, C+ is a fair grade for the Warriors in that regard. Another team that's going to get a perfect grade from me is the Houston Rockets, And if you told me going into the season the Rockets would be the second seed in the Western Conference right now, I probably would have said you're crazy. And they have been playing lights out basketball on the defensive end of the floor. Just such a good, well-rounded team and versatile youth on this team. 21-9, 2 seed in the West. I mean, it's unbelievable what they're doing. And if you watch my Rockets video recently, you would know that I think they're going to continue it. A+, you could not have started this season better if you're the Rockets. Similar to the Cleveland Cavs in the East, this team has basically had a perfect start to the season, no question about it. And if there was a grade above A+, I would have gave it to them too, just like the Cavaliers. For the Indiana Pacers, another super disappointing start. Personally, I was a big believer in this system, in this team, and in this roster. They have not shown it in the slightest this season. I know they've had, a little bit of injuries with guys like Aaron Nesmith, who's a big piece of the team, but at the end of the day, this is just not the same team we saw last year go all the way to the conference finals. In the East, they are 15-16. Even just saying that, it almost feels like they've been worse than their record, shows, because maybe it's just because of the expectations we had on them, but they're, just currently 8th in the East. I really thought this team would be a top 5 seed or top 6 seed, no question. And there's still time to get there, but at the end of the day, I expected so much more from the Pacers, and I think a lot of other people did. And for that, I'm going to have to give them a D- grade. I know it's an unfavorable grade, and you're still in the mix for a playoff spot, but man, they are just a little bit dysfunctional, if I'm being honest. They've just been really inconsistent. Player to player, they've been inconsistent, and just as a unit in general, it just doesn't look like the same team. Just a really bad start from the Pacers, I'm going to be honest with you. The Los Angeles Clippers, this is a different story with my predictions this season. I famously predicted that the Clippers would be actually pretty good this season, and despite losing Paul George for, some people would say, nothing, I was like one of 3 people in the entire world probably that thought the Clippers actually got better this offseason. Without Kawhi Leonard, you've managed to go 17-13 in this insane Western Conference. And the most viewed video on my channel is the Clippers deep dive, where I got so many hate comments about how I'm totally wrong about the Clippers. I was right, okay? This team is stacked with a lot of really good role players, right? James Harden, not having the best season, but he's still capable of running an offense super efficiently and just being an offense, right? And so even without Kawhi Leonard, to be 17-13, I have to give this team an A- grade. I could even go A+ if I wanted to, because they're really good defensively and stuff like that, but man, have they been a lot better than a lot of people thought, except for myself. The other LA team, the Lakers, who usually get all the attention, this has been, again, sort of a roller coaster season for them. They started out pretty hot, really tapered down the next few games, and now all of a sudden they're sitting at 17-13. This is, a team that's loaded with a lot of talent. They have 2 superstars, but at the end of the day, it's kind of just been up in the air how many role players will be able to contribute, and night to night we're going to get out of certain guys, and they've withstood. They're 6th in the West right now, 17-13. That's pretty good. I'm going to give them a B grade, just a solid B, because they haven't necessarily exceeded my expectations, but they haven't necessarily disappointed me. And so I just don't think you can really go lower than B, and I definitely don't think you can go higher than B. They're doing just fine, and if they continue this pace, they'll be in the playoff mix, and they're obviously going to be a dangerous team come playoff time with the star talent they have. Pretty positive start to the season, I would say, for the Lakers, all things considered. Now, another young team with a lot to prove, who has had a flawless start to the season, in my opinion, especially given the circumstances they've been put in with injuries. That is the Memphis Grizzlies with an A+ grade, currently 3rd in the Western Conference with a 21-10 record. I mean, this is amazing for this team after going through what they went through last year with just the total chaos, injuries up and down the board, all across the board, right? You are getting such a good result if you're a Grizzlies fan, despite not having Vince Williams Jr. for most of the season, despite not having G.G. Jackson. It's still yet to play this season. 2 key role players for this team. Zach Edey's come in and contributed. He went down with an injury at some point. I mean, this team just unfortunately has a lot of health issues still, but they're still managing to win a ton of games. 21-10 is insane in the Western Conference. Ja Morant has been awesome. Unfortunately, he's dealt with injuries. Triple J's been awesome. Desmond Bane has been really inefficient compared to what we're used to for him, but you're just still finding ways to win games, including rookie phenom Jalen Wells, who should be up for a Rookie of the Year finalist towards the end of the season. And you just got to be thrilled with what the result is every night for the Memphis Grizzlies, despite being down so many players night to night, and despite what you went through last season. It's just an awesome, perfect start for the Grizzlies. A+ grade. The Miami Heat, another team that's a little bit difficult to judge, especially when we're talking about regular season stuff. They're not known for their regular season generally, but 15-13 in the East, ranked 6th in the East right now. This is a winning record. Tyler Hero's been absolutely incredible this season, elevating his game to all-star level, guard play, in my opinion. He's been the best player on the team. Offensively, no question throughout the year. Jimmy Butler's been lackluster. You're still somehow 6th in the East, and this is just a lot of it is it's just a team effort night to night, and they're doing really well in that regard. But at the end of the day, I'd give them a B- grade. You know, I don't, again, it's another team where I don't think you can really go much higher than that. Maybe you could say a solid B, but you definitely can't go worse than that. We honestly expect a lot of chaos from the Heat game to game in terms of like production and stuff like that and efficiency. But at the end of the day, they're still holding it together. I think it's just a fine start. You know, not bad, not good. Give it a B-. Another team that's been all over the place, and that is the Milwaukee Bucks, who have actually turned a lot of it around as of late. And so they are going to get credit from me for that. But man, to start the season the way they did, they're 16-13 right now. I know Chris Middleton has been out of the lineup for most of the season. Since he's been back, he's been heavily restricted with minutes. And so your third option is really important, obviously. And this has led to Giannis and Dame having to carry so much of the offensive load. And so it's hard to kind of rank them where I'm going to do it, but I'm going to have them at a C+ grade. You just can't start the season the way they did and expect to be higher than a C+. You just really can't on this list. And I know they've been really good lately, like I said, you know, even winning the in-season tournament and stuff like that. But man, rocky start for the Milwaukee Bucks, and you know, they're still somehow sitting at 5th in the East because the East has been so bad this year, except for like the top few elite teams. The Bucks just haven't been one of them, and I expected them to be one of them. You know, this is a team we expect to be 2nd, 3rd, 4th in the East every year with a 50+ win record. I'm not sure that's going to be their season this year. Definitely going to be a playoff team, but I can't say that this team is better than a C+ at 16-13 right now. I just can't do it. Minnesota Timberwolves, another team that has been widely regarded in the offseason as a extremely high upside regular season team. Yeah, I thought they'd be 2nd in the West this season. I was mistaken. I also did predict that before the Cat trade, which has had such a negative impact on this team, unfortunately. But you know, if you're the Timberwolves sitting at 9th in the league with a 15-14 record, you just can't be happy about that at all. And you know, it's going to be a C- for me. You know, it could even be worse. I could do a D or a D+, all things considered. But you know, I am going to give a little bit of leeway, just factoring in that they've had a lot of moving parts this season, including Randall and DiVincenzo. Not much time to prepare with those guys going into the season, and it's a lot to adjust to. You know, adding a new number 2 option on this team with the little amount of time that they did, and they're playing better. You know, no question about it. I mean, they started super rough, 6-4 in their last 10, and it's just not been consistent. But defensively, they're still good. I just can't go lower than C- given all the new moving parts. But at the end of the day, they just have to be so much better if they want to be anywhere near where they were last year. And again, this is a situation similar to the Nuggets, where Ant is doing everything he can to keep this team afloat, and it almost hasn't even been enough, you know, which is kind of sad to see. But 15-14 in the West isn't bad, obviously, because of the level of competition, but this is supposed to be one of the best teams in the West on paper, and so I have to give them a C- grade, unfortunately. Another team that was really hard for me to rank was the New Orleans Pelicans, because they have just been decimated with injuries throughout the season. To start out, you know, Zion Williamson has basically been completely absent this season, and then DeJounte Murray goes down early with that injury, keeping him out for much of the early season, and then Brandon Ingram goes down with an injury, and so it's just been a mess of a season and a start for a team that I expected to be in the playoffs this year. So unfortunate. I really feel for Pelicans fans because of what my team's going through, but 5-26, one of the worst records in the league. It might even be the worst. I have to give them a D+, you know, and that is factoring in injuries, right? Because I get the injuries are, you know, one of the main reasons, but 5 wins for a projected playoff team, you know, it's a really tough scene, and I do really feel for Pels fans, but at the end of the day, I just can't go higher than a D+ on a team that most people would predict to be a playoff team, and to have 5 wins at this point, you just can't really justify a C or a C+, and so D+ is what it is, unfortunately, but I do feel bad for ranking them there, even though I think that's where they should be. The New York Knicks have had a, all things considered, really positive start to the season. You know, they are 20-10 and 3rd best team in the Eastern Conference. That is a great record, but am I crazy in thinking that the Knicks should just be a little bit better than they are despite a really good record? You know, this is one of the most talented rosters in the league, top 5 in my opinion, and they've been really good. I just feel like something's missing with this season. Correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments. I'm gonna give the Knicks a solid B grade. You know, I could go a little bit higher, and I don't think I can go much lower, but at the end of the day, I just expect this team to be a little bit better than they are. You know, just a couple games, just a fraction better, but I think they've absolutely been good enough, you know, compared to what their roster is and all the talent they have, especially with, again, another situation where it's a new number 2 coming in, a new number 3 coming in. Like, they've had a lot to get used to this season, and they've lived up to expectations with a 20-10 record, but you know, they just should be a little bit better in my opinion. So I have them at a B. Could be a B+ easily, but really good start though overall for the Knicks. Oklahoma City Thunder, this is another perfect, flawless start to the season from one of these teams here, and 24-5 at the time you're recording this in the Western Conference is absolutely mind-blowing. to be doing what they're doing. They're dominating both ends of the floor night to night. They have one of the best players in the league, top 4, top 5 probably in SGA, who should be up for an MVP, finalist once again here. You just can't start better than 24-5 in the West, and they've just made it look so easy night in and night. They're just dominant. They're absolutely dominant on both ends. A+, again, this is another team where if I had another grade to give higher than A+, I would. It's just been perfect start to the season for the Thunder. Not much else to say, really. The Orlando Magic, this is an A team, all right? And considering they've been down their best player for the vast majority of the season, Paul Banchero, to be 4th in the Eastern Conference, that is crazy alone. And now they're down Franz Wagner. They've been struggling without Franz, to be honest, but to still be 4th in the East with those two guys going down is absolutely incredible. So I have to give them an A. The only reason they aren't a little bit higher at an A+ is just because it's hard for me to put them with teams like the Cavs and the Rockets and the Grizzlies and the Thunder. I just think they're just a tick below that, but A is really great for the Magic, who exceeded all expectations despite losing their best two players. And prayers up to those two guys. When they come back, this team is going to be a force to be reckoned with in this East. One of the top favorites for a conference finals team, no question. They are going to be dangerous when those two guys are healthy, because then they'll be able to compete night to night offensively, but their defense is just absolutely smothering. They're such a loaded, versatile, deep roster, and that has helped them so much in this regular season. Can't do much better than they have, but it's just not perfect, I guess is my point. So A is going to be their grade. One of the best starts in the league, no question, all things considered. My team, the Philadelphia 76ers, man, I don't want to do this. The only F- I'm going to have on this list is my own team, the 76ers. You really can't start much worse given the situation the Sixers are in with 3 all-star caliber players. Again, this is maybe just me being a little harder on my team than I would be anyone else's. It's kind of what we do as fans, right? But F- feels a little harsh, maybe considered their record, maybe considered they've just been totally injured across the board. I mean, Embiid's played, less than 10 games. Maxey went out with an injury for a little bit. Paul George has been in and out of the lineup, and, the big 3 of Maxey, Embiid, and PG have only finished like 3 games together this season, which is crazy to think about. The talent this roster has and the expectations, not just Sixers fans had, but the rest of the league. This was put up or shut up season for Embiid and the Sixers to be 11-17. It just can't be much worse than that. And so I know injuries have been the main, culprit of this, but how can I possibly give anything higher than an F- when you have maybe the most talented big 3 in the entire league and you're 11-17 to show for it? Just abysmal, abomination of a start. We're all really, really hurt as Sixers, but we, at the end of the day, we've been 7-3 in the last 10 and beat the Celtics on Christmas, which was a big upset. But so there's a little hope going forward, I would say. Maybe I'll make a video on this, like kind of a mid-season deep dive. Let me know if you want to see that down in the comments. But it's just been rough sledding, folks. It's been tough to watch, and still have hope. I'm not giving up on the season. I made that very clear on Twitter. Follow my Twitter, twitter.com/dhey. But F- for the Sixers, only F- on the list. Little spoiler alert for the remaining teams. I'm being a little harsh on my team. I think that's what we do, but this is the worst start to the season with, given the context of every team that any team has had, in my opinion. For the Phoenix Suns, I'm going to give them a C+. I don't think it's been amazing, and they've dealt with some injuries themselves. KD, he's missed some time, which was big, but I expected a little more out of the Suns than at 15-14. It's not a bad record in the West, and they'll definitely be a dangerous team come playoff time. I expect them to be in the play-in tournament, potentially even the playoffs by the time the playoffs roll around. This is just such a talented roster. I don't know. I just expect a lot better than 15-14, given this roster and how good they are and stuff like that. And so I know it's a new coach and it's a little bit to adjust to with some new players, but I just don't think I can go much higher than C+. I expect this team to have 20 wins around this time of the season, especially given how teams like Minnesota and, Sacramento have started. You just expect them to be a little higher, right? For the Portland Trailblazers, this is a team that has surprised me in a big way. They're not good by any means. They're 10-20, but they're not the worst team in the West, and they're not even close, right? We just talked about how the Pelicans have 5 wins. There's another team we'll get to, but, to have 10 wins with this, young, inexperienced roster, who I actually thought they would be tanking big time. Like, I thought they were going to sell out for the #1 pick, and it's just not been the case. They have a lot of young, talented pieces. We all knew that going into the season. They even have some really good veterans that are contributing, like Jeremy Grant, like DeAndre Ayton. Those guys could be moved. We'll have to see, but this team's just been much better than I thought. Now, I'm going to give them a solid B grade because, I really thought at this time they would have like 4 or 5 wins, but it's just been a good start to the season for the Blazers. And again, they're not going to be in the play-in tournament. They're not even going to be close. And And maybe if you're a Blazers fan, you'd like to see them lose a little bit more games, which is kind of weird to say for a grading video. Like, I kind of struggle with that. Like, do I grade tanking teams like an A+ if they're losing games? I don't know how. I'm just going to go regular format, but this is just a good start for the Blazers. B grade. I would not think they would have 10 wins by now, and they've been competitive and night to night and stuff like that. And so not in the league as a whole, but just night to night, they're not going to lay down and just let you have the victory. And so definitely a B grade for the Blazers. This is going to be the second worst grade on the list, and it's going to be the Sacramento Kings with an F+ grade. I could go D-, I could go D. This is another team I had in the playoffs. I had them as like the 5th seed, especially after getting DeMar DeRozan, and they haven't even really been affected much by injuries. I mean, De'Aaron Fox, DeMar DeRozan, and Sabonis have all played most of the games, and they're 13-18. Again, and like, I know it's the West, and I know similar to the Timberwolves, it's a new second or third option offensively. They have to get used to and accommodate yourself to, but this is not acceptable. If you're a Kings fan, the way they started this season, there's just really not an excuse for it. Keegan Murray's got to shoot better. It's just a lot of things going wrong, but one of the more disappointing teams in the league is the Kings, because at least for the Timberwolves and teams like that, we could say, oh well, they're still an above 500 record at this time, and they're really tough out night to night. Not saying the Kings aren't, but like, they're not even in the play-in tournament. I mean, they are 12th in the Western Conference. I mean, it's just totally unacceptable. I thought this team would be a really good regular season team with the offense. It's just not working out. It's just really unacceptable, and F+ makes a lot of sense to me. I don't think they've been as terrible as the Sixers, because at the end of the day, you're still in the Western Conference, so your competition's harder, and you're still having a better record than the Sixers, but it's pretty close. I mean, this is a monumental disappointment so far. I still think they turn it around. I still think they probably will. I don't think they're going to end the season 12th, but at this point in the season, it's super bad. Have to give them an F+. Kings fans, let me know down in the comment section what's been the biggest reason you've been so bad this season, and how disappointed are you in your team. San Antonio Spurs, up next, we're going to have a B- grade. I expected this team to be pretty competitive night to night. I just didn't know exactly what their results would look like. They're currently 15-15, just sitting out of the play-in tournament. They're about 1 game back from the Golden State Warriors. It's been okay. I think this has been just about what I would expect. Kind of around a 500 record. Unfortunately, that's probably not going to get you into the play-in tournament with the Western Conference this year. Pretty sad for the Spurs, but also prayers to Greg Popovich, one of the greatest men this sport has ever seen. Hopefully he returns soon, and maybe that will actually help the Spurs win a little bit more games, but B- makes a lot of sense. I can't really say they've been much better than a B-, and I definitely can't say they've been worse, and so maybe you go solid B, but 15-15 is pretty good given what the roster is and what we all expected going into the season. Now, for the Toronto Raptors, this is a very disappointing start. This is a team I had around a play-in tournament team. Like, they were kind of volatile in terms of teams to predict going into the season, because they could have either been like really solid with kind of a 500 kind of record, or they could be low-ended things a little bit better than where they were now, but I did not expect them to be 7-24 at this point in the season. And a lot of this can be attributed to injuries. I mean, Scotty Barnes has been dealing with injuries throughout the season. He hasn't played a lot of the games, and Emmanuel Quickley's basically been out the entire season, which to me, that's your third best player and maybe even your second. And honestly, he is the lead guard on this team. It's such a big loss to have your third or second best player out, especially when you're not a dominant offensive team. But they've just been so much worse than I thought they would be. 7-24. I know a lot of Raptors fans have been excited for this season to see what the young guys could do all together with a full season under their belt. Once again, we're seeing a team with injuries just totally get taken out of the picture because of those injuries, and it's really unfortunate. Even without Quickley, I just expect them to be better, similar to the Hornets. Just really disappointing, right? I thought this would be a round of play-in team, so D+ makes a lot of sense for me, unfortunately. And for the Utah Jazz, we're gonna have a 7-22 record here. This could be a D. This is a tanking team. It's kind of hard to rank them because, like, on one hand, you could say they've been A+. They're losing some of the most games in the league, but I just couldn't bring myself to, even for the tanking teams like the Jazz, I couldn't bring myself to give them an A record with a 7-22 record. Yeah, I have to kind of go with a standard formula. I'm going to give them a D rating. It's not an F, it's not a C-, it's just a D, because I can't give credit to a team losing, even if they're supposed to, right? And so, D is kind of where they have it, but, not anything out of the ordinary for the Jazz. We all expect them to be bottom of the conference. And same thing goes for the Washington Wizards, just another tanking team that I have to put D, because can't justify a 5-23 team with, the worst record in the league being higher than a D. It's just not the way we can do it. But, all things considered, good job, Wizards. Keep losing. You need those top odds for the lottery, and so great job winning 5 games, basically. And so that's pretty much going to have to do it for the list. I think there were some I could go a little bit higher, a little bit lower on, but I went with my gut and just kind of what the situation called for at the end of the day. If you disagree with anything, please let me know down in the comment section. Just try to be respectful about your opinion. You know, we could talk about takes. I love talking basketball in the comments. Let me know what you have as your list and stuff like that. I always love getting the feedback in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, you know, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. We're on the road to 15K. And if you want to see more videos like this, they'll be, you know, coming out multiple times a week. And so hopefully you guys stick around because I'm trying to grow something special out of this channel. And I want you guys to be part of it, man. We love basketball so much. My favorite thing in the world. I want to share it with you guys, you know, every week. And so again, all feedback appreciated in the comments. I feel like I did my best on this list. Kind of a tough thing to do. You know, a lot of these will change as the season goes on. This is not a final product by any means. 30 games of this season, which is kind of a good enough sample size, I feel, to give a good list on and good rankings on. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Again, like, subscribe, comment, follow my Twitter, links down in the description, and I will catch you guys in the next one. This has been grading every NBA team so far this season in 2025. Hopefully you guys had a great holiday, and hopefully you guys have a great new year. I will catch you guys in the next one. This is your boy D Haven. As always, peace.